Welcome back to Libby's Lounge Patreon edition, where we are recording the unofficial audiobook for the Assassin's Alliance. We are on to chapter 25. Let's get started. Chapter 25. Maureen. 4 years later. Maureen trekked up the stairs to her father's office, a large manila envelope in hand. It had been 4 years since she committed to spying on him, since she convinced him, Oliver, and Mike that she was spying on the legacy. But each last-minute summons came with an inkling of fear. Had they figured it out? Was she walking to her death? Maria nodded at her when she entered the lobby. "He's waiting for you." Maureen offered a smile in return. "Mike and Oliver?" "Not tonight," she said with a slight frown. The butterflies in Maureen's stomach swirled with anxiety, and her smile slipped as she headed straight into the office without knocking. She would catch up with them after the meeting. The top of her father's head met her as she approached the desk, his pen writing furiously. She waited with her hands behind her back, fingers nervously tapping the envelope. Finally, he let out a long sigh and sat back. Dark bags sat beneath his wary eyes, and 2-day-old stubble covered his jaw. "What do you have for me?" he asked. She clenched her teeth together at his stupid quid pro quo. The information she scrounged up on Legacy was to be delivered before he would share any graveyard details for her to bring back. She tossed a thick envelope with falsified files onto his desk, loose papers fluttering around. He looked up in surprise. List of agencies Legacy has infiltrated. There are a few names of past liaisons, their dossiers are included, but nothing current. Impressive. He picked up the envelope, and he thumbed through the contents. Francis had years of fluff information for her to feed him. Enough to keep him hooked, but never enough to give him an edge. Where did this come from? Her pulse quickened. He'd never asked her that before. Why do you care? Where? He repeated. The man I'm sleeping with, she lied. I was able to access some older files while he passed out. If she expected a reaction to find out his daughter was sleeping around for information, she was sorely mistaken. Instead, he nodded in approval, and she hated that she wished he'd show an ounce of disgust or disapproval. Why did it even matter? She was only there to make sure they could eliminate as much collateral damage as possible, and to have a front row seat to his eventual demise. He opened his lower desk drawer and slid the envelope inside and pulled out a much thinner one for her. The latest graveyard requests. She took the files and raised an eyebrow. This hardly seems to be all the contracts from the last few months. And yet it is. He cleared his throat, an uncomfortable look passing over his face. I need a meeting with Mr. Wayward. I presume you can make that happen? The air in the room thickened, and Warren realized why Mike and Oliver weren't here. Something wasn't right. Why? As far as he's concerned, we've played by the rules, delivered all the information in a timely manner. We held nothing back, all the while you feed him information on us to sweeten the pot. Warren looked down at the slim envelope again. And now? I believe we have a leak, he said. A leak? Of the graveyard contracts? Buzzing began in her fingertips. The circle who knew about the graveyard contracts was minuscule, unless he'd brought more people into the fold than she knew. Of a few things, he corrected. Not a word to Oliver and Mike on this. You think they're involved? I think the only people who know about the leak at this moment are you, me, and whoever has betrayed us. I'd like to keep it that way. Understood, she said. Francis was not going to be happy about this. Losing eyes inside the graveyard would compromise whatever big plan he was working on. Would compromise her usefulness to Hale security. Anything else? When you report back to Mr. Wayward, inform him if he wishes to keep his eyes inside the graveyard. I'm going to need assistance finding and fixing the leak. Music beat against the door as Maureen approached the apartment. Loud music in Oliver was not something she was accustomed to. Oliver liked his music the way he liked his apartment, orderly and squared away, not calling attention to his place of living. But a new addition to their small team was a fan. Their cousin Derek. Shit. If Derek was in town, she was not sticking around. When he appeared in their lives, reappeared, it was unannounced at the Philly apartment a few years ago. Their Aunt Susan had met an untimely death, and Cousin Derek had nowhere else to go. Maureen had worried for a total of 5 seconds that her cover was blown before he complimented Mike on getting a fine piece of ass and then proceeded to hit on her for the rest of the night. He was an obnoxious, entitled jerk and dumb as rocks. If she knew he was in town, she would have returned straight to New York. She hesitated in the hall for a few minutes, debating if it was worth the headache to see Oliver. It wasn't. They could catch up another time. She backtracked to the elevator and cursed as it opened. Mike's face broke into a grin as he spotted her, a case of beer in hand. Zach Hedderfield stumbled out beside him, clearly several drinks deep into his partying already. Maureen! Zach shouted, the distance between them vanishing as he wrapped her in a hug. Her body stiffened. Hey, Zach, she said through a strained smile. I was just leaving. You can't leave, Zach said, draping his arm over her shoulder. We're having a party. The urge to shove him off her was overwhelming, and she started to count to 5, knowing if she snapped each finger that touched her, it would definitely blow her cover. But before she even got to 2, Mike stepped forward and shoved the case of beer into Zach's chest. Hands off, my girl, he growled. Zach's arm disappeared along with any hint of humor. Tell Oliver I'll be right there. Sure, Zach said, his excitement waning under Mike's glare. See you inside. Later, Maureen. They waited in silence, shoulder to shoulder, as he stumbled to the apartment. The only way to keep her cover and grant her access she needed within Hale security without raising any flags was to keep Maureen as Mike's on-again, off-again girlfriend who was close with the family. The first year had been almost impossible, the tension between them palpable as she struggled to keep her broken heart in check. But it was the promise of bringing her father to his knees that kept her returning like an addict, through the pain, through the heartbreak, through the absolute danger that her life had become. One wrong move and her father would have all he needed to end her. As she got comfortable at Legacy, as Andrew patched up her broken heart, as her relationship with the team became more stable, coming to Philly wasn't as bad. They'd fallen into a comfortable routine when people were around, and Mike respected the hard boundaries she'd established, like only she would initiate contact. Then somehow, over the years, even when it was just Mike and Oliver, it felt close to old times. They joked, they complained, and she would almost forget for a few hours that she didn't really belong. Thanks, Maureen said, stepping back toward the elevator. Aren't you coming to the party? He asked. No. Why not? Is Derek there? She asked, already knowing the answer. Mike floundered for an answer and settled on a nod. I might be a semi-masochist, but subjecting myself to my cousin unknowingly trying to get into my pants is right there with hot needles in my eyeballs. I think I'll pass. It was just supposed to be a few people for Ollie's send-off. Maureen's eyebrows shot up. Send-off? Where's he going? Back to Europe. Your dad didn't tell you? Does he tell me anything? She countered, irritation rolling off her. She may be gathering intel for the Legacy, but seeing Oliver had made these visits home worth the sacrifice of not seeing her father's bloody corpse at her feet. How long? Mike had the decency to look ashamed. A year. A year? They had never gone a whole year without seeing each other, and it wasn't like she could just pop over to Europe to visit her sometimes boyfriend's best friend when she wanted. The graveyard would definitely track that as suspicious. You could have told me. Your father asked me not to. She scoffed. Of course, any opportunity to make her life miserable. Great. Come on, it's the last time we're going to see him for a while. At least stop in and say, see you later. Wait, you're not going with him? Mike shook his head. I need to be here to make sure your cover isn't blown. No need for you to show up at Hale Security if your boyfriend's in Europe, unless you're dating your dad. Mike! Maureen shoved him and laughed. That is disgusting. I mean, we could have Derek step in. She shoved him again, and he broke into laughter, the infectious sound bringing a smile across her face. You're an idiot. He gave a mischievous grin. Yeah, but you still pseudo-love me. Keep telling yourself that, Maureen said, ignoring the strange pang in her heart his words elicited. So he'll be gone for a whole year? Mike nodded. You know, Zach already told him you're out here. You'll break his heart if you don't at least stop in and say goodbye. Her hand drifted to her back where the envelope with the graveyard contract sat, tucked away. I really need to get these back to New York, she admitted. Who's in there? Zach, Derek, a few others from the Alpha team. And all possibilities for who could be the leak in the graveyard contract. Shit. She should go home, but going home with a list of names to help Francis was an even better plan. Fine, but I'm not staying long. Mike pushed the door open and she scrunched her face against the assaulting noise. Hey, Mike yelled, his voice booming over the music. Turn it down before the cops are called. Sorry, a voice called, and the volume dropped. A few people? The apartment was packed. Maureen could imagine Oliver's blood pressure climbing with each cup set down on the coffee table, each chip that fell on the floor, and Maureen realized just how stressed Oliver must be about going to Europe. Mike would only throw a party this big to give Ollie plenty to stress clean before leaving. Zach stuck his head up from the kitchen, a beer already in hand. Want one? Yes, please, Mike said, scooting past him into the room. I'm good, she answered. Where's Oliver? Last time I saw him, he was heading to his room. Maureen! Maureen's back stiffened at the sound of Derek's voice. She plastered a smile on her face as she turned around. His face was already red beneath his brown, messy hair, the collared shirt untucked. He looked like he'd been drinking for hours. Hi, Derek. His eyes roved over her in the most uncousin way, and she shivered. Where have you been hiding? If she could have plucked out his eyeballs, she would. But again, that might blow her cover. Anywhere you're not. Where's Ollie? Oh, don't be like that, Derek said. Like what? Maureen asked, her tone dropping. Like you can't stand to be around me? He reached for her face. With reflexes honed over the last 4 years, she swatted his hand away and reestablished the distance between them, every fiber in her being ready to attack. What her father saw in him was beyond her. He was a creep. I think I've made my feelings for you very clear, she said. I'm with Mike. Speaking of, did Mike tell you the good news? He asked. No news involving Derek could be good news. What's that? She asked, playing along as she scanned the room for someone to assist her. She could handle Derek, but her handle and what was acceptable for Mike's girlfriend to handle were two totally different things. We'll be seeing a whole lot more of each other. I moved into that spare room, Derek said, jerking his thumb toward her bedroom. The room dulled around her. You what? Her gaze flashed down the hall to her room, anger flaying in his chest. Now that Oliver's moving to Europe, Mr. Hale thought it would be good to have me close by. Maureen couldn't help the scoff that escaped. For what? Obviously, he doesn't think your boyfriend can be trusted, Derek said and took a step closer to her. But just because he's on his way out the door doesn't mean you need to be. He reached for her face again, and before she could move to counter, a body pushed past her. She stumbled into the couch as Mike's fist connected with Derek's face. The duo stumbled back, knocking to the table, cans of beer spilling to the floor. Mike landed on top, his fist connecting with Derek's face, over and over. The skill difference was criminal, yet the room erupted with cheers and bets. Mike's been wanting to do that for months. Mike turned to Zach. He leaned against the wall, sipping a beer as the chaos unfolded. Well, maybe now he'll take no for an answer, she said. When Mike extracts himself from the brawl, tell him I went to find Oliver. Although the send-off was for Ollie, he was camped in his room. Clothes were meticulously folded on his bed with a suitcase half-packed on the floor as he counted how many shirts were stacked in front of him. He glanced up, the annoyance melting from his face as he saw her. I didn't know if you were going to make it. Dad said you might have to head back right away. I'm sure he wanted me to. With careful hands, she moved the few stacks of clothes over and sat on the bed. Why didn't you tell me you were leaving? She asked, her shock at the news fading to hurt. I just found out yesterday. I was going to call when I landed if I didn't see you before I left. Pass me those? He pointed to the pile of pants beside her and she handed them over. Well, this sucks, she said, and flopped back onto the bed. Reporting back to her father and pretending to be in a relationship with Mike was going to be an actual job now. Add Derek moving in, and she would almost rather take another sin trip than return to Philly for the year. Almost. The bed dipped, and Oliver laid down beside her. She scooted over and placed her head on his shoulder. How are things over there? He asked. I worry about you. You don't need to, she said. Everything is working smoothly. Until it doesn't, he countered. All it takes is one wrong move and you're caught, Liv. She sank her teeth into her bottom lip. Lying to him had been the hardest part of this entire plan, the genuine concern for her safety a constant cause of stress for him. She tried to reason with herself that he should be worried. If her father found out the real truth, she was dead. The door opened and Maureen turned her head expecting to see Mike. Zach, red-faced and disheveled, pushed the door fully open and froze. Maureen bolted up, cheeks heating, and felt Oliver do the same. Shit. She knew exactly what that looked like, and it would cause unnecessary ripples throughout the small team. What's wrong? Oliver asked, jumping off the bed. Derek, Zach said. Mike just beat the snot out of him. There's blood everywhere. He might need a trip to the ER. Blood? Oliver's voice raised an octave, and Maureen knew it wasn't because of the possible state of Derek, but his beloved apartment. He pushed past Zach into the hall. You coming? He asked, giving her a curious look before following Oliver down the hall. Maureen heaved a sigh and followed, spying Mike's door cracked open. She veered off course, as the dutiful girlfriend would, and knocked before pushing it open. He looked over at her, a smile lighting up his face as he pulled the bloody shirt off. His face looked fine, not a scratch on him. Hey! She should yell at him for being so foolish, but instead she said, Thanks. He's an ass, Mike said. I'm sorry I didn't step in sooner. I'm glad you stepped in when you did. I would have blown my cover. Maureen scanned the room. Nothing had changed. Same bedspread, same lamp, same dirty laundry basket. The last time she was in here, her entire world blew up. She trailed her fingers along the bed, her mother's voice echoing through her mind. Great asset. Shitty kid. A chill swept through her, the memory tracing its way through the path sin had carved in her veins, and she wished Andrew were there to warm her back up. Sorry about your room, Mike said, chasing the memory from the basement from her mind, but the chill stayed, rooted in her bones. He dropped into the bed, lounging back, feet crossed with his fingers interlocked behind his head. It's fine, she said. It would have put up red flags if I had my own room. I'll put your stuff in a bottom drawer. He nodded to the dresser. You can move it to Ollie's room if you want, he added quickly. I only had a few minutes' notice to clear it for Derek. Why is he moving in here anyway? She lowered herself to the edge of the bed. I don't know. Last minute your dad said Oliver was leaving and Derek was moving in. Interesting. She shifted back further into the bed and leaned forward on her elbows. Maybe her father thought Derek was the leak. Remove Oliver and give Derek a chance to expose himself. But there was an apartment full of people who had higher access than Derek. If finding the leak meant Oliver returned home faster, then she needed to get back to the Institute tonight. You seem happy, Mike said. She looked over at him. What, I should be miserable? He chuckled. No, but happier than you have in a few years. I could see it in your posture, the way you smile when we're just sitting around. Like you're at peace. That was because she'd finally found a place to call home. Warmth spread from her core. She'd found a family, and love, and purpose. Does it bother you? She asked. What? No, I'm just concerned that she would bring the legacy down on all of them. If only he knew she was the only reason they were all still among the living. I told you I could do this, she said. I never said you couldn't. An awkward silence fell between them, and Maureen let her mind wander back to the living room. Derek wasn't the most likely suspect. Maybe Zach? He was an outlier, though, not part of the Alpha team, but pulled in for rogue jobs. And then there was the Alpha team, the ones who pulled off the graveyard contracts. Are you seeing someone? Mike asked, breaking her train of thought. Her stomach catapulted to her throat. Mike. There wasn't a good answer she could give. She and Andrew had been dating for the last 4 years. Lying to her father had been easy. He believed she was just sleeping around for information. No feelings. Oliver had a don't ask policy. He didn't want to know what she did in the bedroom. But neither of those would work with Mike. Is he legacy? She gave a hard laugh, hoping it was enough to cover her sudden panic. Protecting the legacy was her life now. How much could she say that would satisfy his curiosity, but keep her safe? She could lie, but they would unravel the truth faster than she could hide it. Where do you think I'm getting all my information? Mike's eyes widened, and she hated the blush that raced over her body, the words making the relationship with Andrew feel dirty. It was anything but. He opened his mouth a few times, words seeming to have failed him. Finally, he settled on, I'm sorry. That wasn't what she had expected. Don't be. He's a genuinely good guy. As long as we don't fuck this up, I'm okay. The intensity of his stare sent a shiver down her spine, and he moved his hand towards hers, and then stopped himself and shook his head. If anything happens to you, I'll never forgive myself, Liv. She could feel every ounce of regret he had about them sitting behind his eyes. But it was too late. It was always going to be too late. Andrew waited for her back home. Francis waited for her back home. Her fingertips grazed the folder tucked against her back. You don't get to say that to me, Mike. You had your chance to protect me, and you chose my father, she said and stood, heart hammering into her ribs. I need to get this back to New York. See you in a few months. And that was the end of chapter 25. Again, not a super long chapter, but a lot happening with her going back and forth and us learning that there is a problem in the legacy or in the Hale Security graveyard contracts and what that will mean for her going forward. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you for chapter 26.